Lynx Titan is undeniably the best RuneScape player of all time. In a few short years, he blew past everyone to rank 1 on RuneScape's high scores, but then he vanished without a trace. Lynx Titan is still rank 1 on the high scores, but nobody has heard from him in over 6 years. How did he reach rank 1 so quickly? Where did he go? And how much longer can he keep his rank? This is the incredible story of Lynx Titan. Our journey begins in 2013, not yet in old school RuneScape, but RuneScape 3. At the time, Lynx Titan went by a different name, Forsberg888. He was one of the best players in the game, even back then, and was in the top 200 of the high scores. By now, he had already reached level 99 in all of his skills, but wanted to take things even further. In RuneScape, most skills end at level 99. Once you've hit 99, you've unlocked everything the skill has to offer. Reaching 99 only requires you to gain about 13 million XP in that skill, but you can continue gaining XP all the way to 200 million before the game stops you from gaining any more. Outside of a few select skills in RuneScape 3 that do go past 99, there's no real benefit to going past 99, let alone all the way to 200 million XP. But for many players, it's the ultimate long-term goal. Whether it's for prestige, competition, efficiency, or simply the satisfaction of seeing the XP counter reach a number that will never increase again. Now, Forsberg didn't just want to get 200 million XP in one skill or a handful of his favorites. He wanted to get 200 million in all of them, a feat that only one other player, Suomi, had ever accomplished. But soon after Suomi got 200 mil all, a new skill was released, Divination. Suomi had no plans to go for 200 million XP in Divination, so the next person to get 200 million XP in every skill could take his spot as rank 1 on the high scores. Forsberg could be RuneScape's next rank 1 player, if he worked hard enough. But this is a grind that would take billions of GP and thousands of hours of time. Luckily, he was rich from his years of playing the game. Forsberg started in 2005, and since then had accumulated billions of gold through a few different methods. He had invested in a yellow party hat in 2009 for 450 million gold, which by now was going for about 1.4 billion. He spent a lot of time killing glade cores, which earned him about $1 billion, and he had earned a few billion from selling dungeoneering floors, a process where he and the buyer would enter a dungeon together and he would complete the floor while the buyer sits back and does nothing. Forsberg would get paid handsomely in GP, while the buyer would earn dungeoneering XP and tokens while AFK. If only something like that existed for agility, I think Forsberg would have been RuneScape's first trillionaire. Forsberg was even a dicing host for a while, which for those that haven't heard of them, were essentially human slot machines. He made some decent money doing this, but he soon gambled away most of his earnings with another host. I guess that old saying is true, the house always wins, even if you were the house 10 minutes prior. Forsberg still had a lot of money, but he was quickly burning through it on his journey to 200 mil all. He could do what many others grinding for 200 mil all did, take donations from other players, but Forsberg wanted to earn the money himself. Luckily for him, he would soon discover his best money-making method of all when in February of 2013, a little game called Old School RuneScape released. Before I discuss that though, I want to talk about today's sponsor, HelloFresh. Dig into their biggest menu yet with 50 plus dinner options and even more market items that suit any healthy lifestyle. Plus, start your day right with free breakfast for life. Get one free breakfast item per box while your subscription is active. HelloFresh has been a big time saver for me. They make the recipe, gather the ingredients, and ship it all straight to your door pre-portioned. But plans change and life gets busy, so HelloFresh lets you easily customize your delivery from week to week. Mix and match lifestyle options to suit your needs, like fit and wholesome, family friendly, quick and easy, vegetarian, and more. And everything can be tailored tailored to your schedule by adjusting your delivery date and even skipping a week when you're not able to cook at home. Click the link in the description or use my code and get 10 free meals plus free breakfast for life. One breakfast item per box while subscription is active if you're in the US. Outside the US, the local discount will apply. Forsberg wanted to give Old School a try without cutting into the gains he was making on RS3, so he created a new account to play it, which he named Lynx Titan. After a few months of playing, he earned himself a quest cape and got bored, so he put his focus back on RS3 full-time, until he learned about something called swapping. Swapping is the process of trading gold in one version of RuneScape for gold in the other version. For example, let's say you have 10 million gold on Old School RuneScape, but you're primarily a RuneScape 3 player. Instead of letting it sit unused, you could find a trusted swapper to exchange it for RuneScape 3 gold. But gold in both games isn't considered equal. RuneScape 3 is much older and has had a lot more inflation over the years, meaning gold is far less valuable there. So depending on current exchange rates, your 10 million Old School gold can be traded for much more. Today, you'd probably be able to exchange your 10 million gold for 100 million gold in RS3. Think of it as RuneScape's version of Forex trading, except your broker is some guy named your mom's bald. When Old School RuneScape launched, gold was much harder to come by than in RuneScape 3. So if you were a RuneScape 3 player, your best money-making method was actually playing Old School and swapping the gold over. So Forsberg had an idea. What if he used his Lynx Titan account to craft double nature runes, the best moneymaker at the time, while grinding away his goal of 200 mil all on his Forsberg account? Now with the funding from his Lynx Titan account and months of grinding, he would reach 200 million XP in every skill on Forsberg 888 on July 17th, 2014. Finally, he had achieved his goal and was placed at rank 1 on the high scores. Actually, sorry, scratch that. Unfortunately, he placed second because another player named Drumgun beat him to 200 mil all by just over 2 weeks. After this, he would understandably grow bored with RuneScape 3 and decided to quit to instead play Old School RuneScape on his Lynx Titan account. So from here on out, I'll be referring to him as Lynx Titan instead of Forsberg. Now, something I've yet to explain is that when Lynx was playing RS3, he was playing the game pretty casually, only about 18 or so hours a day. We'll discuss how he was able to do these insane numbers later, but he would more or less continue playing the exact same way when Old School became his primary focus. As you now know, a big part of his gains in RS3 were because he played multiple accounts at the same time to fund his main. So he would sign up for a few more Old School accounts to repeat this strategy. This time, his alts were mainly used for runecraft, flipping items on the Grand Exchange, and a very controversial moneymaker I want to save for later. Much like with RS3, Lynx would very quickly begin to level up his OSRS account and set his sights on accomplishing 200 million XP in some of his favorite skills. His first one was crafting, which he would accomplish on January 28th, 2015. You'd think that by now, he would be on the first page of the game's high scores, right? Someone with a skill at 200 million XP, less than 2 years into the game's launch, should be pretty far up there. Well, he was actually far from it. Lynx played very differently than most players. Typically, when someone decides to get a skill to 200 mil, they've already achieved level 99 in every skill. By now, Lynx had 99 in every skill except ranged. He wanted to save it for when he decided to get 200 mil Slayer, so he could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. He did this because he knew he would get a ton of ranged XP while using a cannon during his Slayer tasks. The day that Lynx Titan got 200 million XP in crafting, he was rank 51 on the high scores. If he had 99 ranged, he would easily have been somewhere in the game's top 10. The RuneScape high scores work like this. Whoever has the highest total level gets ranked the highest, but if 2 players have the same total level, whoever has the most XP ranks higher. At the time, everyone on the front page had level 99 in every skill, and despite Lynx having more XP than most of them, he was ranked much lower because he was missing a 99. But the competition to be the best player in RuneScape was fierce, and the game's top players couldn't ignore how quickly Lynx was catching up. He was gaining XP at a rate that nobody had ever seen before. By now, Lynx was playing old school RuneScape 24 hours a day. So Lynx had to be cheating, right? Or account sharing or something like that. Well, he was surprisingly doing neither. In September of 2013, Jagex released a minigame called Nightmare Zone. It was supposed to be a nostalgic activity where you fight old quest bosses, but Jagex accidentally turned it into the best way to train your combat stats. I already made an entire video about NMZ's many controversies, so I'll keep this part brief. Today, when you're playing old school RuneScape, you have to interact with the game in some way every 20 minutes or you'll be logged out. Like, let's say you're in the Nightmare Zone and 20 minutes passes without you clicking on anything or moving your camera because you got distracted by something else. Your character will stop attacking the bosses and automatically log out. This 20-minute timer didn't exist when old school RuneScape launched. If you were in combat, you wouldn't get logged out until 6 hours passed. So if you put on a set of Guthan's armor, which has a 25% chance to heal you based on the damage you deal, you could sit in Nightmare Zone and gain combat XP while you slept without worrying about your character dying or logging out. It was incredibly overpowered. So once Lynx Titan finished up his grinding for the day, he would toss on Guthan's, hop into Nightmare Zone, go sleep for 6 hours, and then in the morning start actively grinding again. Now, the high-level community at the time had very mixed opinions on overnight NMZ training. Some players felt that although Jagex allowed it, it was cheating. They felt that nobody should be gaining hundreds of thousands of XP in their sleep. At the time, RuneScape's top skilling clan, Hexus, had a rule against using this method, enacted by then rank 1 player, Sicknerd. However, after he saw how quickly Lynx was catching up, he would leave Hexus to try his hardest to compete with him. But no matter how hard Sicknerd or anyone else tried, nobody could keep up with Lynx. Sicknerd would get burnt out pretty quickly, and would soon retire from competing for ranks to instead focus on his Iron Man account. He figured he could be miserable and spend years grinding to potentially just wind up in second place or just go play the game mode he enjoyed, so can't really blame him for that one. In the following months, Lynx would earn 200 mil smithing, thieving, and fletching, and by May of 2015, he had the most XP in the game. But he still wasn't rank 1. He had still yet to train his range to 99. In early August, he would achieve 200 million Hunter, and finally decided it was time to go for 200 million XP in Slayer. While doing so, in less than a week, he would earn enough ranged XP to hit level 99, and on August 14th, 2015, Lynx would take rank 1. The reign of Lynx Titan was finally here. He of course kept going. He would make a quick pit stop from Slayer in October to knock out 200 million herb lore, which would make him the first player in the game to hit 2 billion XP. All his hard work was paying off, because the next day at RuneFest, Jagex would recognize his achievements and give him not 1, but 2 Golden Gnome Awards. The Golden Gnome Awards is a show that Jagex does every year that recognizes the game's most talented and creative community members. In 2015, they had a category called the Hall of Fame, where Lynx Titan was awarded a gnome for reaching rank 1 in old school RuneScape, and Forsberg888 was given a gnome for reaching rank 2 in RS3. Jagex, funnily enough, didn't seem to understand that Lynx and Forsberg are the same person, so despite winning 2 awards, he only ever received 1. By now, Lynx had achieved a sort of cult-like following. He was an extremely private guy. Almost nobody had ever spoken to him, and very little was actually known about his personal life. He captured that same sort of mystique that Zezima did in the mid-2000s. Players wondered things like, how does he play so long? How is he so efficient? And does he ever go outside? So he finally decided to let a bit of the mystery slip and made an Ask Me Anything thread on Reddit. We learned that Lynx is Swedish, at the time was just 19 years old, and lived at home with his parents. His parents took care of things around the household, cleaning, buying groceries, and cooking, and Lynx would help out here and there, but as you probably guessed, he spent nearly all of his time on RuneScape. But that doesn't mean he was just a living version of this guy. Lynx actually got more exercise than the average RuneScape player does. He said that he would do 60 push-ups and sit-ups every day. Over the past 3 years, he had only missed 2 days, which were during a double XP weekend on RuneScape 3. He would also post both his weight and height, which were in the normal weight range for his build. But that doesn't necessarily mean he was in perfect or even great health. In other comments, he would mention that he only spends around 5 minutes outside each week, and his diet consisted of bread 3 times a day and lasagna once a day. Lynx was a machine that turned carbs into XP. The more questions Lynx answered, the more questions people had. Many wondered why his parents allowed him to live a lifestyle like this. Well, at the time, Lynx was also doing school online. At his current pace, he had around 5 to 7 years left. He had gone to school in person previously, but stopped going for quote, other reasons in 2012. Players theorized that Lynx must have some kind of disorder that keeps him inside. If you remember Drumgun from earlier in this video, he managed to achieve rank 1 in RuneScape 3 because he has a condition that makes it hard for him to spend much time outside or in crowded and dusty places. Perhaps Lynx has something similar. A commenter would ask, do you have any conditions such as Asperger's syndrome? To which Lynx would simply reply, yes. Just to clarify, what was once diagnosed as Asperger's syndrome in the past is now classified as part of autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. I'm not a doctor, but ASD is often characterized by difficulties in social interaction, repetitive behaviors, and highly focused interests, which seems pretty spot on for Lynx. The community was pretty divided in their reaction to this AMA. One side was very critical of the life Lynx was living. They felt he was wasting his life, ruining his health, and was a burden to his parents. Well, the other side was much more supportive. Sure, he's not gonna change the world by being rank 1 on RuneScape, but he's doing something he genuinely enjoys while pursuing an education. His lifestyle is one that many RuneScape players wish they could have. After this, Lynx would go back to keeping to himself and focused on the grind. Roughly 6 months after achieving his previous 200 million XP milestone, he reached 200 million XP in Slayer, and then turned his attention to construction. But then he got banned. Lynx had been banned by Jagex's automated systems, which he claimed mistakenly flagged him for botting. This quickly sparked widespread rumors. Had RuneScape's rank 1 player been cheating this whole time? Fortunately, Lynx was unbanned about an hour after contacting Jagex's support team, who confirmed the ban was an error and that he had been playing legitimately. Interestingly, this wasn't Lynx's first encounter with false bans. In the past, some of his alternate accounts were temporarily banned while doing something players referred to back then as the Karamja shop method. This is the controversial moneymaker I mentioned earlier in the video that I wanted to save for later. This is Jaminua's Jungle Store, a small shop on Karamja. While shopping here, if you wore Karamja Gloves 1, which are obtained from completing Karamja's easy achievement diaries, you could sell items to the shop for 1.75 times their low alchemy value, meaning there were a ton of items you could buy on the Grand Exchange and then sell to this shop to make money. Rune plate legs, for example, were going for about 42k on the GE at the time, but could be sold here for 44.8k. This may not sound like much, but when you're selling thousands of items to the shop an hour, it really adds up. While trading Slayer on his main account, Lynx would use this method on his alts and was able to rake in 12 million GP per hour. This was an insane amount of money for the time and honestly is still insane today. Jagex would later patch this method out of the game, but Lynx was able to earn billions of gold using it while it lasted, easily enough to cover the cost of some of the game's more expensive skills. Lynx would continue his grind, and by the end of 2016, had had achieved 8 more 200 mils: construction, ranged, attack, hit points, defense, cooking, strength, and fishing. By now, everyone had given up on trying to compete with Lynx Titan. A lot of RuneScape's top players measure progress using EHP, which stands for Efficient Hours Played. EHP tracks how much time they would have spent if they only used the fastest training methods. For example, if the best Slayer method in the game gives 100,000 XP per hour, but you only earn 50,000 XP per hour, it would take you 2 real hours to gain 1 EHP. At the start of 2017, Lynx Titan had 10,341 EHP, while the player in rank 2, Hey Jace, had 7,056. This means that if Lynx Titan quit right now and Jace started doing 24-hour days, playing with perfect efficiency the whole time, it would still take him 136 days to pass Lynx. By now, Lynx had decided to do more than just get 200 mil in his favorite skills. He wanted to be the first person in old school to get 200 mil all. Lynx started opening up more to the community around this time, and began posting to his YouTube channel every few months. Since he was getting pretty close to reaching 200 mil all, many players had started to ask him, what's next? Well, he said he would probably do 200 mil all over again on another account. As for why, he said that the only realistic option long-term for his future is something similar to what he's doing now, but he didn't elaborate on why. In the first few months of 2017, Lynx achieved 200 mil firemaking, woodcutting, and prayer. While going for these goals, he would also stream for the first time in 5 years. Unfortunately, his first stream didn't go so well. While trying to 2-tick woodcut, someone kept killing the bird he needed for the method to work. This hiccup aside, Lynx was able to garner hundreds of engaged viewers, and he wasn't even talking. Unlike most of his YouTube videos where he would speak, he was just playing music and grinding away, and people loved it. He would stream 2 more times in the following months, but would seemingly grow bored of it. Lynx would also be recognized in the 2017 Guinness Book of World Records Gamers Edition, which I didn't really know was a thing until I started researching for this video. He was included for having the highest XP in old school RuneScape, but by the time they printed it, it was already far out of date given how fast he was gaining XP. Lynx was seemingly on top of the world. He was receiving huge amounts of recognition and had just 5 skills remaining. But then, he vanished. On July 19th, 2017, players noticed that Lynx hadn't gained any XP in 2 days. Lynx was an extremely consistent person. It was to the point where players could accurately guess what times he would log in and log out every day. He hadn't missed a day in years, if ever. This was both extremely odd and concerning. Players, of course, jumped to the worst possible conclusion, that he had died or been seriously injured, or that he ran out of lasagna, while others thought surely he would be back soon. Maybe some bad weather knocked out his internet. The next day, he once again gained no XP. Same for the next day and the next day. By July 31st, it had been 2 weeks since Lynx Titan had gained even a single experience point. Thankfully, on August 1st, he finally reappeared. When players asked him where he had been, he said that he was on vacation for the last 2 weeks, presumably with his family somewhere. Lynx would continue his grind to 200 mil all, but as he approached the final stretch, he would slow down dramatically. Playing overnight in Nightmare Zone had long been patched out of the game, so Lynx was only playing 18 hours a day again, but those 18-hour days would soon turn into just 8 or 9. But he could afford to take it slow. He was still way too far ahead for anyone to even have a chance of catching up. I think that Lynx was getting a little burnt out, but he didn't want to give up on his goal. However, there was one goal he was going to give up on: getting 200 mil all on another account after this one. When players asked him about it, he said that he now instead planned to focus on something else. Maybe other games, but he hadn't really decided yet. By December of 2018, he had just one skill left: mining, his most hated skill. which I honestly don't blame him. Until Shooting Stars, it was my least favorite too. But regardless, he pushed through, and on the 28th of December 2018, finally achieved his goal of reaching 200 million XP in every skill. As the crowd surrounding him exploded with congratulatory messages, he thanked everyone for the support, then logged out. Would he try and get every pet in the game, go for rare drops, or change his mind and do it all over again? It turns out he wouldn't do any of that. Instead, he disappeared without a trace. When he logged out after he got 200 mil all, he stopped communicating with everyone in the RuneScape community. Months would pass, then years, and still nobody had heard even a single thing from him. He would briefly log in 2021 and was spotted at the Grand Exchange, but he would log out again a few minutes later without saying anything. It's been a little over 6 years now since he finished his goal, and still nobody knows what happened to him. Maybe he's secretly leveling another account to 200 mil all, having fun in other games, or off using his education somewhere. But through all these years, he's managed to hold on to his rank 1 spot on the high scores. The only thing that could dethrone him is a new skill releasing, one that someone else reaches 200 million XP in before him. When RuneScape 3 introduced new skills, Lynx never returned to max them, so it's unlikely he'll come back when Sailing releases in old school RuneScape relatively soon. His rank 1 spot isn't permanent. Because of Sailing, it's now a ticking time bomb, and sooner or later, it will go off. But whether he ever logs in again or not, Lynx Titan's legacy is one that will never be forgotten. Check out the video on the right about RuneScape's most famous PKer Elve Mage. Find out why he vanished too, and the many controversies that surrounded him before he disappeared.